This is Jim Bovard, and this is my video on why Colonel George Custer deserved his fate at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Thursday, June 25th, is the 150th anniversary of the 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn. Colonel George S. Custer and 267 U.S. soldiers were massacred by thousands of outraged Indian warriors on the plains of eastern Montana. Custer committed war crimes in numerous wars, and his fate was what he deserved. In 1969, as a 12-year-old traveling to a Boy Scout jamboree in Idaho, I visited the Custer Battlefield National Monument. I was riveted by the scene of the best-known showdown between the U.S. Army and the savages who were resisting the spread of civilization. I jotted a note from one of the plaques stating that the 7th Cavalry's heroic defense made the nation yearn for details that no white man lived to tell. My view of the battle was heavily shaped by They Died with Their Boots On, the 1941 Hollywood movie that featured Errol Flynn as a heroic Custer who met a tragic fate. Decades later, I recognized that Custer was tied to a long series of atrocities. In 1864, as a Union cavalry commander fighting under General Phil Sheridan, Custer sent his troops on burning sprees that utterly devastated the barns, farms, homes, and towns in the Shenandoah Valley where I was raised a century later. A newspaper correspondent embedded with the Union Army reported hundreds of nearly starving people are going north. Not half the inhabitants of the valley can subsist on its present condition. Northern armies struggled to defeat Confederate armies in battle, so they tyrannized women and children instead. And when Confederates fiercely resisted the Union Army's 100-mile arson spree in the Shenandoah Valley, Custer responded by publicly hanging 6 Confederate soldiers in my old hometown, Front Royal, Virginia. In September 1864 was when that went down. After Colonel John S. Mosby, the Confederate commander, hanged captured Union troops in retaliation, Custer relented from killing captured Confederates. 2 years after the Civil War ended, Custer was court-martialed for ordering the summary execution of his own soldiers who had allegedly deserted when Custer was commanding a fight against Indians in Kansas. Custer was convicted on that charge and other abuses of his authority, and he was suspended from the Army for a year. Custer's brutality against his own soldiers helped explain why he was hated by many troops under his command who saw him as a glory hound who would sacrifice them for his own prestige. Custer was summoned back to active duty even before his suspension ended by General Phil Sheridan, who was then Supreme U.S. Army Commander in the fight against the Plains Indians. Sheridan is best known for telling an Indian chief in 1869, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian." Sheridan wanted a commander like Custer who would not hesitate to scourge the enemy. On November 27, 1868, Custer launched a surprise dawn attack on a peaceful Indian village that was flying a white flag and was at peace with the U.S. government. Custer's troops slaughtered more than 100 Indians, including scores of women and children. No one was permitted to surrender, and many Indians were killed as they sought to escape. But Custer denied that his unprovoked attack on the village was a massacre because not every Indian was killed. Instead, many women and children were taken as hostages after the battle. In 1875, President Ulysses S. Grant approved a plan to trample U.S. treaties with Indian tribes in order to seize the Black Hills Territory after gold had been discovered there. Custer's arrogance and recklessness got all of his troops killed in 1876. Assuming he could easily vanquish his Indian opponents, Custer divided his command shortly before the battle. He charged forward after doing little or no reconnaissance. Custer's soldiers had single-shot rifles because the Army quartermaster believed that repeating rifles wasted ammo. The Indians didn't have a quartermaster, so they had repeating rifles. That worked out badly for the U.S. troops. Custer rejected an offer to take Gatling guns with him on the expedition, which could have helped balance the odds against thousands of opponents. In 1991, Congress voted to change the name from the Custer Battlefield National Monument to the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. That signaled a belated recognition that the Indians had legitimate grievances that spurred their resistance to the U.S. Army. The Trump administration, as part of its campaign to restore truth and sanity to American history, is reportedly targeting signage describing broken promises to Native American tribes at the Little Bighorn battlefield, according to Montana television station KTVQ. Okay, but what about all the broken promises that actually occurred? Are they going to be expunged? The anniversary of the Battle of Little Bighorn is a reminder of the perils of official history that sweeps all government crimes and abuses under the rug.